Hello and welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Good evening, Paul Sickle here.
Hey, it's been a few weeks since we've last met.
Yes, you've been convalescing.
I was diagnosed with pneumonia, so I've been on the mend for a short period of time here.
I'm glad you're back. We needed your insight.
Well,
a lot going on.
So, breaking news tonight, big election down in Chicago. A lot of candidates vying to replace Rahm Emanuel as Chicago's next mayor.
South. Yep, they will have for the first time, Chicago has had an African-American mayor, and it's had a female mayor. They've never had an African-American female mayor.
Yeah, and now we are guaranteed to see that result.
You will. Tony Prekwinkle, who was actually the odds-on favorite, came in second place, actually. Lightfoot was...
Lori Lightfoot,
Lori
who's
Lightfoot.
A former federal prosecutor and who has never run for elected office before. She actually came in first.
And she's actually openly gay, too. So that would be a real first.
So she will, she'll be facing Tony Prekwinkle, and who is the county board president and the chair of the Cook County Democratic Party.
Right. Do you have any favorites? Or
it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, there were a number of candidates in the race. I think there were something like 14 people that were running. I mean,
very notably Bill Daley.
Yeah, Bill Daley,
who
was also a former chief of staff to Barack Obama, which Rahm Emanuel obviously was his first chief of staff. He obviously is part of the Daley
machine. Right.
Machine. You know, his brother Richard M. Daley was mayor for a number of years. His father, Richard J. Daley, was mayor for like a couple of decades plus. So I think he was running to fulfill the family legacy, but I think it seems like, based on the results tonight, Chicago's kind of done with that.
Yeah, I think they want to break from the machine-style politics. And Rahm Emanuel kind of appeared to be part of that.
Yeah.
Although I wouldn't say it's quite fair to Rahm, but I mean, he's insider for sure.
Right. Well, obviously Rahm was somebody who had been active in Democratic politics for a number of years. You know, he worked for Bill Clinton when he was president. He was in the House leadership for a number of years, and then became Barack Obama's first chief of staff before running for mayor. So, you know, he had been around the block.
So of the remaining candidates, the last two, I'm going to go with Lightfoot.
Lori Lightfoot, she came in first.
I'm going to give her the edge. She came in a very narrow first. Prekwinkle a close second. But I'm going to say this: Prekwinkle is the insider. Yeah. She had the early lead. The momentum's been breaking to Lightfoot. I don't see how that changes, save for a couple things. One is either very negative stories about Lightfoot.
Sure.
The campaigning against her for being gay is probably not going to work.
Yeah. Right.
I hope not in this day and age.
It's going to be a historic result regardless. I mean, obviously given the two candidates that are that have been left standing after tonight's election. So,
and I just want to say Prekwinkle, I think this is the big reason Lightfoot would have the advantage. Prekwinkle is seen as more the insider. And right now, this is about getting rid of Rahm.
Yeah.
The insider, Bill Daley, didn't make it. It's in Chicago. There's a mood for an outsider.
Given the number of candidates that were in the race, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where the support gets thrown to amongst those candidates and when endorsements take place. But the general election will take place on April 2nd.
The same day as ours.
Same day
okay. I was going to ask, is it the 9th or the 2nd?
It is the April 2nd, so the same day we have the big Supreme Court race with Neubauer Hagedorn up here.
That's one's getting interesting.
It is. Hagedorn has been on the defense, I think, for a number of weeks now around some of his
very
activities.
Controversial viewpoints.
Yes.
The one caution I would say is that we thought we had Rebecca Bradley not doing too well for the incredibly anti-gay comments she made when she was at Marquette. And that didn't really go very far.
Right.
I do think that this might be different. Hagedorn was older, and it's just there was a presidential primary that complicated things and probably helped Bradley out a little bit. The Republican primary that year was so close in Wisconsin.
Right.
Closer to home, even closer to right at home, we've got a chance for the Democratic National Committee.
We do.
Coming to Milwaukee, potentially?
The Democratic National Convention could potentially be in Milwaukee for 2020. They're supposed to be announcing in short order here whether or not it's going to go to Milwaukee, Miami, or Houston.
I thought Evers had great comments on it. Did you see that?
Well, there was definitely some trolling going on from Miami.
Yeah, they said that Milwaukee's not fancy enough, and you have to show them a good time, wealthy donors. And Evers is like, oh, really? If that's what the Democratic Party is trying to do, I think they'll have a very small convention.
Yeah, there won't be many people showing up.
He said, you come up to Milwaukee, we'll treat you just fine.
Yeah.
What do you think
What do you think the odds are?
I was going to ask Jenks you the same question.
Well, I think if the Democratic National Committee wants to make a statement, Milwaukee is the town.
Yeah.
And if we want to obviously go with the fancier town with more nightlife, then maybe you would go with Miami. Maybe, but I don't know. Miami in summer though. I mean, Miami and that's the last place I'm going to want to go is Southern Florida that time of year.
So the wild card,
Houston,
is available hotel rooms.
Yes,
of which there's many fewer here.
But I think we've come a long way since Milwaukee hosted the AllStar Game after Miller Park opened. That was seen as a big criticism that there wasn't adequate hotel space for the teams and the players and all the media and all, that was an issue. But again, if the DNC wants to make a statement and they want to try to right the wrongs of 2016, what bigger way to say that than by saying, "Hey, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we hear you, we see you, and we're going to make our presence known here, and we consider you and this geographic region a priority."
Right. And the thing is, there's really good airport access, obviously, when you include Chicago and Madison. And if you're willing to go an hour and 15 minutes outside the area, you're more than hit the hotel mark because you're digging right into the Chicago. O'Hare's about an hour and 15 minutes from downtown Milwaukee, and there's about 10,000 hotel rooms right there.
Exactly.
So the Milwaukee probably makes, if people can look at, look, you're going to be driving an hour if you're in Houston or Miami anyway, even though it might be, 13 miles away or something that. But here you might be 60 miles away, but it'll still only take you 60 minutes. I think, plus we've got a good rail infrastructure to Chicago. We could have had a good rail infrastructure in Madison.
Yeah, if the previous governor had done his job.
Right. So, but we've got a lot going for us, so I think the odds just slightly favor Milwaukee. I do think that this Miami push from the high roller donors can't be hurting them. That's probably the best shot they have.
If it's not Milwaukee, who do you think would get it? Houston or Miami? You think Miami? Okay.
Florida is more of a true swing state.
But I think if you're the party though, wouldn't you rather focus your efforts on Texas rather than Florida? It just seems like Florida's trending the wrong way.
So one of the things is that Texas, a lot of the financial backing is going to be out of the oil industry. The Democrats are very concerned about a big movement on the left, even like Green Party type stuff, like undermining it, potentially fueling third-party stuff by having too many ties to the oil industry in Texas. Because invariably some of the donors will have ties to the oil industry.
Right, that's unavoidable.
So in Texas. So I think that pretty much cancels them out. Which is one of the reasons Texas is stubbornly red, by the way, is it's kind of a petrol state. We have to remember that. As diversified as it is. It's just like Florida, I've mentioned several times.
Or Alaska.
Right. Florida stays a little bit pinkish because as diversified as it gets, you keep moving Rust Belt retirees down that are white and not diverse. And then in Texas, as diversified as it gets and big as it gets, you still have oil being the dominant economic driver. Yes. So the industry is just not something that's compatible with today's Democratic Party, and we probably don't want it to be if we're concerned about climate change.
Right. Well, no. I mean, in the days ahead, I think there should be a decision forthcoming, probably by the next podcast, perhaps.
It could be any minute now.
But it's going to be interesting. So going back to Mr. Tony Evers, he's in the planning process of his budget, and it seems like he's been putting out press releases every day, just trying to get out in front of a number of issues that he ran on, and he's forcing the state Senate and the state's assembly leaders to put out statements to the opposite effect.
He's putting them on the defensive. Good job by Evers' comms team is doing a very nice job right now.
It seems like he's going on offense, and obviously there's still decisions to be made in the courts about the lame duck session and the powers that were taken away from the governor as Scott Walker was outgoing.
On all these things, though, he's daring them to oppose.
Well, yeah, and these are all things that have been proven to be politically popular. I mean, everything from medicinal marijuana, freezing school vouchers and independent charter schools,
That's probably the most controversial.
It probably is, but he's approaching it correctly. And
Medicaid expansion, $15.
Yeah,
minimum wage, which isn't immediate, but
he recalled the National Guard from the border yesterday.
That's smart. All of that will be controversial too, but it is still. These are majority positions.
Yes,
and he's making it very clear where his administration stands.
Yes,
and even though the legislature might try to slap him across the face, let them. If they want to have fights over these things, they marginalize themselves.
Exactly. When they pass the appropriations bills down the road on some of these items, they can keep or eliminate some of these programs. However, the line item veto, as we all know, is a very powerful tool that the governor has in his back pocket. You know, he has the ability to change the dollars and cents that are allocated to these programs. So they may still exist on paper, but he can choose to say, well, I'm going to chop a zero off of this or move a decimal point over here.
Well, he can write Medicaid expansion in, actually, with this line item veto. However, they can also refuse to give him a budget and just operate off of last year's baselines. We do have that perverse incentive in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and we all know that they're going to pull out all the stops because it's Robin Voss and Scott Fitzgerald, and they're going to do everything they can to stand in the way of anything that this governor wants to do.
Well, ultimately, they'll negotiate. The Democrats will have a weaker hand, and then there will be somebody probably from the governor's office kind of overseeing or checking in on it and saying what we can and can't agree to. And ultimately there will be some sort of agreement in the caucuses.
Yeah.
And so it's really up to public sentiment and public pressure. If you pressure on a few things, and I think Evers has done a pretty good job of picking out about 4 or 5 things, you can give the Democrats a little backbone on fighting for them, while at the same time making it less popular for the Republicans to oppose.
Exactly. You're putting them on the defensive, which I think is exactly what he's doing. When you look at the things that he's putting out press releases on and notifying the public that he is actively supporting as he designs his budget, these are going to be the priorities. And now it's up to the Republicans to either go along or to have to fight against.
Unless we walk you down the primrose path,
yes.
None of these progressive things are going to get enacted easily.
No.
All of them are going to take a real fight.
Yes.
But Evers has shown very good political instincts. In Wisconsin, we need to both be resistance to this right-wing stuff, but also we need to be for something, too.
Yes.
And Wisconsin's budget process is a great place for... If you're interested in resisting stuff at the federal level, or the Trump level, you should be for something at the state level.
Well,
and this is a great place to do it right now. The atmosphere is right for this.
And when you talk about the Wisconsin...
redistricting reform, he has that in the budget.
That's another one.
That's brilliant.
And the Supreme Court announced today they're going to take up redistricting reform.
SCOTUS.
Yeah.
So careful what you ask for by the time it gets there, but we'll see. I
mean, based on North Carolina and Maryland,
I'm not sure I want this Supreme Court ruling anymore. But the timing may not be good for a while.
Other housekeeping since the last time we met, the national emergency was declared by Mr. Donald Trump following his State of the Union, which is basically what we said was going to happen from the get-go. When this whole drama started at the end of 2018, it was pretty obvious that this was going to be the end game because nobody was going to budge. At some point, the government would probably shut down, and then there would be a reopening at some point. But the Congress was not going to go along with wall funding, especially after the election results.
So Trump got a significant bounce, I would say, from the State of the Union.
Significant bounce?
Bounce. Yeah, his support. I mean, if you follow along with 538, which I've been following pretty closely, his support went from more than 15 points in the negative to within, I think, 10 points in about 2 weeks. It's starting to now plateau back out, which I think is tied in with the Democrats pushing back. But Trump had a very good rhetorical couple weeks, with his base at least.
Well, he was on the offense, so there was a lot of cheerleading that went along with that. In terms of wall funding for the border.
The resistance, though, has been appropriate, and I think they are stemming the bounce. That said, I've been pointing this out for a while now, but Trump still exceeds Reagan significantly in the approval ratings at where Reagan was at this point in his first term. And if I have to remind some of these millennials or post-millennials who might be listening... kids, as Reagan would say, Reagan went on to win 59% of the popular vote, which was one of the highest of my lifetime, I believe. And he won 525 electoral votes. Mondale took 13.
Trump has never been...
Mondale lost Massachusetts. Just to keep it 100 here.
Trump has never been nearly as popular as Reagan, as we've talked about on previous podcasts. So...
Mondale only won... Which state did Mondale win?
He won D.C. and Minnesota.
There you go. You got ding, 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 ding. Wow. Well, Scott's old enough. He remembers. He voted in that election. Right?
I think I did in grade school.
I just say be careful because this isn't exactly fait accompli. I do think we are seeing a plateau here, and I think we do know that Trump's support has real limits. I don't think we're going to lose 49 states next year. But you know what? We may lose 29 states, albeit many of them very narrowly, and we may have a hard time getting over 270 electoral votes.
So
that's why the Wisconsin convention, I think, would be very helpful.
So the House did vote tonight to pass a resolution of disapproval against the national emergency that Trump has declared.
With 2 Republicans out of the 5 from Wisconsin voting with the Democrats in disapproval.
And which 2 would those be?
Mike Gallagher, which I wouldn't call him a never-Trumper, but...
It's from more of a swing district than some of the other districts in the state.
No, his district's pretty right-wing. I think if he was closer in southeastern Wisconsin, he might actually be a never-Trumper.
Who was the other one?
And then the other one was Jim Sensenbrenner, which makes a lot of sense because that's actually typically Sensenbrenner's politics, where he does have a good government thoughts on holding in the executive.
I can see that. I mean, he tends to be...
he went against Bush a few times.
I think he tends to be more consistent than the average Republican in terms of, like, I supported this when there was a Republican president, and I supported this when there was a Democratic president. So
I actually think Gallagher deserves some credit, though. I think that it's that because... Yes, he has Green Bay and Appleton, but he also has some very rural areas.
True.
Green Bay and Appleton are about 2/3 of his district, those 2 counties.
Yeah.
But the last third is right-wing, is all get out outside of... I mean, Green Bay and Appleton are pretty conservative as it is, but they're center-right, whereas the surrounding area is hard-right. And so I would argue that Gallagher's... That's a gutsy call.
Yeah, well, I mean, good on him to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the Senate. They're supposed to take this up over the next couple of weeks. Chances are they're not going to have a veto-proof majority, so this will likely be something that passes the House and the Senate. I think they're going to get enough Republicans in the Senate to vote for it.
Will they get over a filibuster?
No, I don't know that it is subject to the filibuster.
Oh, okay.
I think because the House passed it, I believe that the Senate is forced to take it up.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know that.
So you see it getting through the Senate and actually requiring a veto?
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, so
that's good. That shows pressure.
At least it puts him on record. Trump has to basically go on record saying, "Well, the Congress gave me the middle finger," and then obviously it's still tied up in the courts in terms of whether or not this is legit. So,
right.
In a future podcast, I think we could probably start talking about on the next one the 2020 scenario, because obviously the candidates are all starting to come into the mix right now, and Bernie jumping in was a big thing. And I think there's some people that remain skeptical of his candidacy, but he's not to be taken lightly, just given the amount of money he's able to raise.
I do still remain skeptical. In fact, he's probably not my top choice.
He did lose Tad Devine and some core advisors today. So that's going to be interesting.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, that's going to.
I'm just saying
might be a game changer.
That $6 million fundraised. Now, granted, he's got a following and all that, but the fact that they were able to tap right into that on the get-go tells me something about their organization.
Yes.
And so that these are the things. Amy Klobuchar, she had her problems with the staff, but they had the brilliant event in the snow.
Right.
I mean, it just shows a level of ability to connect.
We'll have lots more to say about the 2020 candidates in the weeks ahead, but it's going to be interesting to see how this all comes together.
Right.
But on that note, forward, everybody.
Forward.